What's going on, guys? It's Kyle. Today we're going to be looking at our first book for the channel, The Slob. This book was written by Aaron Beauregard. I don't know how to say his name, but it's quite possibly the worst thing I've ever read. I don't read stuff like this. I didn't know how rough this was going to get, so this video is going to have an age rating on it and some discretion advisories, because there's some pretty tough topics that is in this book, and stuff that I don't even think would be like, I don't know how it's entertaining, to be honest. I got some critiques, but I'm gonna break down each chapter in the best way I can. I'm not gonna say exactly what the book says because this video would get taken down. I'm not monetized, so I'm not really worried about it getting demonetized. I'm afraid the video would get took down. That's what I'm afraid of. But let's get right into it. So before chapter 1 starts, it starts with our main character, and it's describing a really disgusting house. And when she describes it, it's like hoarder-ish, but like nastier. Like, it's not just like garbage, it's just like disgusting, just nastiness, which is disturbing in its own right. But like the way she's describing this scene in it is like if the walls are covered in like crap. It's pretty rough. Her in this room, and there's a woman with a garbage bag over her head in the corner, and that's kind of like the pre-chapter 1 here. This is the opening credits, as you would say, and then it goes into chapter 1. So chapter 1 is we're following the main character here, and chapter 1 is talking about her childhood of growing up in a hoarder household and how that was really hard on her. And it talked about just how like she went through the motions of cleaning up her own house as a child because she didn't want to live in filth anymore, and that like dirtiness and disgustingness is a really like sensitive topic for our main character. Like, she really can't handle it, and it's understandable because she grew up in a terrible hoarder house that she herself cleaned as a kid. And chapter 1 just sort of going over that, about how she can't handle like nasty stuff because of how, like, she can't handle mess just because of like how she grew up, which is understandable. I mean, it makes sense. And chapter 1 is like, I mean, it's written pretty well. Like, I was kind of getting into the story a little bit, and that all changes later on. Chapter 2 opens up with a salesman knocking at the door, wanting to sell a vacuum cleaner. It's a very fancy vacuum cleaner, apparently. And our main character ends up buying the vacuum cleaner from the man, even though he wasn't a very good salesman, because she says that it basically sold itself. It was that good of a vacuum cleaner. She comes up with the idea of calling the sales place and getting a job there, because she thinks that if she could sell these vacuum cleaners, she can make a lot of money too, and they're expecting a baby. So she's pregnant right now. She's pregnant, she's gonna go sell vacuum cleaners, door-to-door salesman in the 80s, 90s. It's a good setup. Like, it's a pretty good setup to a horror, like something terrible happening. I like the setup, because this makes sense. Like, you would hear about this. It's like, oh, the woman salesman who is pregnant, like obviously can't do a lot of physical stuff, gets abducted at a house. That's terrible, and but that's something that would happen in real life. So it's a good setup. I like the setup. Like, I'm bought in here. Chapter 3 is it's following our main character. She's like going around and selling the absolute crap out of these vacuum cleaners. She's really good at selling the vacuum because it's a good vacuum, and so she goes in, shows the vacuum, she's like, this works. So they're buying it off of her. It makes sense, you know, and she's getting pretty good money from it, and if she sells enough of them, she gets bonuses. And that's where it gets to the end of chapter 3. So the end of chapter 3 is she's on this old, like, backwoods road, and there's no one around, like, that can really see her, but she pulls up to this old house and knocks on the door, and she can tell that it's really nasty, and she's like, oh, this is gonna be an easy sell. And that's when the guy invites her in, and we get to chapter 4. So chapter 4, our main character is inside the house of the Slob, as it's described in the book, and she's describing the house and how disgusting it is, and how it just like, it's revolting. like the entire house is. And while this is happening, and she's talking about how just downright nasty this house is, she walks in and is still kind of like, the man is disgusting as described, like the slob. He's disgusting. He's described as like abhorrent to look at. She walks in, she's like, I think I can still sell it to this guy. It's like, get out of, what are you doing? Leave, get out. This is stupid. Why are you in this house? But Moron walks in and the guy shuts and locks the door behind her. And in the book, she describes it as like, oh, this isn't very weird. Woman, what are you talking about? This is weird. If a salesman came to my house and I let him in and then I lock the door behind him, I'm assuming we're throwing hands immediately. What? That's just dumb. At the end of chapter 4, the slob is leading her upstairs to a particularly dark and nasty piece of carpet, because that's what she wants. She wants him to bring him to the nastiest piece of carpet in the house so she can show how good this vacuum cleaner works, which is a good sales pitch. I get it, but you should have left already. But she gets upstairs and the slob points to the other end of a bed in like this bedroom that he takes her into. And the chapter ends with saying that she walks around to the other end of the bed and that her life was changed forever. This is the part where I'm gonna flash the content warning here. I'm going to use my wording like nicely from here on out. I'm not gonna say exactly. You'll get what I'm saying, but I'm not gonna straight up tell you what happens here, because it's not like a slasher movie. It's not like even like a pretty brutal movie like Martyrs or something. It was hard to read and I don't have womanly parts. If this is hard for you to listen to and I get it, click off, because it's going to get rough and I'm not going to tell you exactly what happens. You'll know though. I'm going to use some flowery wording here. So chapter 5, our main character, whose name is Vera, I like calling her main character, it's just easier. But our main character walks over to the other side of the rug and finds a chopped up corpse of a woman, like laying into the carpet, seeping into it. This makes her trigger a flashback where she can remember as a child getting hit in the face with a Louisville Slugger and it like messed up her sense of smell. And I guess that's the story's way of trying to justify like, why hasn't this woman smelled anything? Which, I mean, it's good that it added something like that, because this whole time that I was reading it, I was like, wouldn't you smell, like you would smell this, right? But no, plot armor, she can't smell it. So the woman laying in the carpet is described to look like she's cut up, for one, but it's also described like pizza cuts, like cut up like a pizza, which, I mean, I guess is leaning to the fact that the slob is a cannibal, which we're going to get into. But some of the wording like that the author uses, I find super corny. And I'll get into some of that because I wrote a lot of notes for this. It's all on my phone here, but I wrote a lot of notes for this book. A lot of it's corny and made me mad. The actual gore of it is revolting and it does its job. I get that. Like the gore is supposed to be revolting. I understand. But the story that's supposed to be happening in the background is just so stupid that it just makes you mad. But if you're reading it for just straight gore, have fun, because that's pretty much, I mean, you're going to get what you asked for. But if you're looking for like a heartwarming, like good, happy ending story, it doesn't happen here, which the author, you know, he would agree with that. He doesn't want a happy ending because it's not meant to make you happy. But you would think that the story would be good. So she hollers real loud. It makes the slob mad. So the slob runs over and backhands her. And then she tries to get back up, and it says that she cuts her teeth. She cuts her arm on the teeth of the woman on the ground. Whatever, you know. I mean, making it rough for the state of it being rough. And then it says that the slob kicks her in the face, and it pretty much like knocks her out. And that's the end of chapter 5. I know I put the warning up for chapter 5, but it really need to stress it in chapter 6. But chapter 6 starts, And it's kind of like the beginning of the story where it starts and there's a new woman in the room with a black garbage bag on her head. Now, at the end of chapter 5, the slob brings in a piece of meat that is described like a Thor's hammer type of thing, and is like telling our main character to eat it, which she doesn't, refuses to eat it really. But it just lays on the counter for however long until she wakes back up. Our main character wakes back up, and then in the book it describes as a Robert Downey Jr. hangover. I understand. Like, putting comedy in something like this too is like stupid to me. I don't know if it was meant to be funny. I think it was meant to be like, yeah, she was messed up, bro. Like Robert Downey Jr. messed up. Like, Robert Downey Jr. hasn't been on crack since the 90s. It sounds mocking to me of like this kind of stuff. It may not be. This is the first book I've read from this author. It may not be, but it just sounds mocking of like the situation. The slob comes in, notices the uneaten meat, and decides to use the meat in a terrible act against our main character. I'm not going to tell you what he does. You already know from the way I'm talking. It's stupid. It's terrible to even write that down. I read that and I was like, what? I mean, word? Like, why? I get it's supposed to make you feel nasty and stuff, but like, the R word by itself is rough enough. You don't need to do that. And what is described earlier in the book as maybe human meat, I don't know. The slob then stops what he's doing and then gets hungry with the meat. Yeah. And then the slob allows our main character to eat as well. In my notes, after every one of these lines, I'm saying, I just put this as revolting, because it is. And I get that's what the writer wants. I understand that. He wants it to be nasty. But if all of his books are like this, like, do you have another gear here? It's bad. It's just bad. And then here's another terrible thing that happens. I already said SW. This one would be, I guess, abuse and forced abortion. If you feel like any of these topics are going to cause you harm, then click off. This is still chapter 6. The slob takes a dumbbell, as described in the book, and starts slamming the main character's belly. Now, I mentioned earlier that the main character is pregnant, so you can imagine what's going on here. The slob takes a dumbbell and is not very nice, and then that goes into a very disgusting thing that I'm not going to say, because I don't want to say that. If you want to know if you want to know what I was about to say, there's probably other videos that would explain it. I'm not going to. That's terrible. And then at the end of this chapter, the slob uses the vacuum cleaner to clean up the mess. I'll let you use your imagination. The best way I could really describe this book, and it's not done, we're on chapter 7, but the best way I could describe this book is like, just over the top. As over the top as you could possibly get. Because, I mean, who thinks of that? Like, some of this is just so downright terrible. How do you even think of it? Chapter 7 opens up, and the garbage bag girl in the room wakes up and is asking our main character to untie her. And we see that she is without skin, and she also had her lips removed, but she can still talk. I don't know how that works, but she has no lips Well, she does have them, but the slobs sewed them somewhere else because this author is ridiculous. Garbage Bag Lady apparently needs to relieve herself, so she does. And even in the book, it's described as a big one, a big turd. I guess. I mean, the author's already wrote all kinds of deplorable stuff. I mean, why not just include big fat turd? The Garbage Bag Lady starts digging through her turd to find a set of keys that she swapped from the slob. And the couple things I had with this is smart, getting the keys off the guy. But also, if you have no skin and you're digging through, you're gonna get like sick, I don't know how you're not already. And the end of the chapter is them coming up with a plan to escape and get out of here. And the plan's not bad, but chapter 8 explains it. Yeah. So chapter 8, our two main characters provide blood from themselves to stage that they got into a fight and that they both died. And that way they could get one over on the slob, get away from him, and they could run off and, use those keys and get out of here. And so the plan is one of them gets took by the slob, or neither of them, and just the door gets to be left open when the slob comes and checks on them because he thinks they're dead from the blood. And one of them can run downstairs, get the gun, and take care of the slob. It's an okay plan. So the slob comes upstairs, notices that they look dead, and is looking around at the scene for a second, and that's when he grabs the Garbage Bag Lady and takes her downstairs, dragging her downstairs, thinking that she's dead. And our main character waits a couple minutes or whatever, and then gets up, follows downstairs, is able to get the shotgun, walks to a bedroom where a terrible act is taking place between the slob and the Garbage Bag Lady, and she sneaks up behind the slob because she has a shotgun, and she thinks that if she's too far away, the spread might get Garbage Bag Lady. So she gets really close behind the slob about to shoot him, but that's when Garbage Bag Lady had the bone from before, and she raises up real quick and stabs the slob in the eye. Now, this would all be well and good if the Garbage Bag Lady would have told our main character that she was going to do this, but she did not. So the slob backs up really quick, but the Garbage Bag Lady is in the area of where the slob would have been, and so our main character blows off Garbage Bag Lady's head. When I say how bad this made me, not because I started to like the main characters or anything, just because of how stupid this is. So this whole sneaking up bullcrap to play out this big rigmarole of the Garbage Bag Lady getting shot in the face, I thought was stupid, and it made me mad. But that's the story. Also, another important thing to mention that I put in my notes for this is whenever the slob is pulling the bone back out, it pulls his eyeball out with it. It's corny. I mean, it's just so corny. Chapter 9, we're getting closer. Our main character wakes up in a house that Jack built type of apparatus here. She wakes up in that. In the room with her as well, she sees a really big meat grinder, industrial size. So she sees the really big meat grinder, and then the slob comes in and has breakfast from this meat grinder. It's humans, you probably figured that part out. It's humans. Slob notices our main character is waking up, so he runs to her and starts declothing himself. You can get what's about to happen here. Apparently the slob had too much for breakfast and he throws up on her while doing this terrible deed. It's so try-hard. This book is try-hard. It's just nasty. It's so stupid. It's not to the point where I'm like, whoa, this is really disgusting. It's keeping me on my toes. It's no, it's making me mad how juvenile the writing feels to me. It's just stupid. So after this terrible deed is taking place, our main character hears some loud explosion type thing, but she ends up hearing New Kids on the Block coming from a Sony Walkman. She walks over and finds the Sony Walkman attached to a young woman because, like I said, this is a house that Jack built type situation. There's tons of bodies down here. It's Jeepers Creepers cave. It's stupid, but she finds the Sony Walkman, and New Kids on the Block is playing, so she thinks that it is a album, but she ends up finding out that it's actually a mixtape of things. And the next song is Beat It by Michael Jackson, which is a great song, but our main character sees this, and in the story it says, I'm gonna use it, this is my motivation to get out of here, I'm gonna beat it. This is quotes from the book. Is that not cornball? I mean, is this not corny? Like, there's terrible gore written here, terrible. Like stuff you could never be filmed. And then there's corny like quips, like Marvel quips in the middle of it. What are we doing here? Our main character is beating teeth out of all these people to use as a weapon, which is terrible, I get it, but that is like the first good plan that she's had, is using body parts as weapons, because that's what she has at her disposal, which normally would not bother me in like a normal like grindhouse like horror film, but because of everything else in this book, I can't give it any praise. That's all chapter 10 is just her gathering up supplies from other people. Chapter 11, it opens up with the slob getting ready to be disgusting again. And this is when the slob is about to do the terrible deed that you can think of. But there's our main character has set a booby trap inside of her, and it makes a, like, bear with me here, but makes a booby trap that cuts his manhood. This causes a big chase scene to go on. This eventually leads into our main character getting the upper hand and kicking him 20 foot off of a cliff pretty much into the meat grinder. This is a big building, I reckon, so I mean 20 foot tall ceilings makes sense in here, I guess. Kicks the slob and he falls into a big meat grinder. It's a pretty long fall and there's sharp blades. The meat grinder wasn't on, but he fell 20 feet on top of some sharp blades, so he's pretty much done for. But our main character walks down stairs to turn the meat grinder on, and before turning the meat grinder on, looks at the slob and says, "You are what you eat." Corny. Chapter 12, she is just her making it out of there. She grabs the slob's truck and then makes it home to see Daniel. And the first thing she says to her very worried husband is, "It looks like it's time for us to clean this place up." You would think with everything that happened that there wouldn't be just so happy-go-lucky. There's probably like pop music playing in the background in my head whenever this scene's happening. For the worst possible thing imaginable happened to this woman, and then she just comes home and is like, "Hello, husband, we need to clean this place up." You're not like destroyed. Chapter 13 is called Silver Fox, and this is where I have some problems. It's a handsome guy, not the slob, taking a woman back to the slob's house. And he finds out that the slob is dead. I'm paraphrasing, but he finds out that the slob is dead because of the, grinded slob. And he burns the entire house and the building and everything to the ground. He burns it all. And then chapter 14. What's about to happen is what made me really mad. Chapter 14 it cuts to a bunch of sharply dressed men, and they are all described as homosexual, and they're all talking about eating TYG, as it says. And earlier in one of these earlier chapters, it talks about TYG being on a can that the slob is eating. You find out that TYG stands for Tender Young Girl, because obviously you could figure out with the meat grinder that he's grinding people, but apparently it wasn't just for him. He's been selling it. Cool, I guess, but like, I say cool, I guess, but not because it is cool, but because this makes like no sense. Because if the slob is like borderline, like mentally handicapped, like to the point where he's described as disgusting, he's like, they roast everything about his appearance. Like he's pretty much the sloth from Goonies. He's running an operation where he cans and sells human meat to like upper echelons. I don't buy that at all. I really don't buy that. They're waiting on a Asian investor, as they say, and he's coming over to get some TYG. And they didn't have any because the Silver Fox guy from chapter 13 shows up and is like, yo guys, he's dead, I burned everything. There's no more human meat in tin cans. And they're like, oh crap. So they order a pizza and they all get drunk and they're calling him Mr. Miyagi, I guess to try to put comedy in this. I don't get it. It wasn't funny, but they tried to put comedy in it. It just made me more mad. And it ends up with the Asian investor killing all of the gay men that were there and eating them instead because he came for human meat. He didn't get any. This subplot to try to like tie it all together in a good bow is stupid, because not once this like entire book is there talk about like I seen some fancy men out the window. I seen like SUVs and minivans pulling up, getting piles of this meat. Not once does it talk about that. I think that the author wrote this story, realized that it had no weight and that it had no real story at all attached to it, that it was just straight torture porn. So he added this to try to make a story and make it like more feasible. I think he wrote all of this story and then added this part in, because he didn't even think about this part until he was done writing the story. It does not fit. It's stupid. It does not fit. And then chapter 15 is back to our main character talking about how they went to therapy, how it's hard for them to be intimate, you know, obviously. And it was just talking about how they're trying to get everything back together, and it ends with them going to the doctor because our main character is sick, and it turns out that she's pregnant. Really? Really? I don't believe that she could have got pregnant because of the absolute horrors that the slob did in chapter 7 or chapter 6. Like, she would have no uterus from the dumbbell. She would have no uterus, so I don't believe it. But it set up sequel bait is what it did, because there's another Aaron Beauregard book called Son of the Slob. So, like, if you had the exact same, like, setup as chapters 1, 2, and 3 of, like, she's going to this terrible, like, she's in this terrible situation. She's going to these strangers' houses in the 80s and 90s. There's no cell phones. And she ends up at a creep's house. That would work. That would work good. Like, but don't make it so downright revolting of the actual things that happen. And I understand it's splatterpunk. It's meant to be revolting. Maybe it's just not for me. I don't get how it's enjoyable to anybody. Like, I get it's fiction, and I get, like, you know, like, I love Saw. That's my favorite one of all of them. And some people consider that too much because it's, you know, like, torturous and it's gory. This isn't just torturous and gory. This is just downright depravity in written pages. And it's just not my deal. But, like, I can get over the terrible stuff happening if it was a better book. Like, I would get over the terrible, terrible writing. Like, when I say terrible writing, I'm meaning the terrible content of the writing. I could get over that if the story behind it was good. They don't really make you, like, want to, like, feel terrible for these characters. Like, really, like, I like this character. Like, they don't really do that. It's just more like, here's your main character. She's not a bad person. We're going to be downright despicable to this main character. And then the book's going to end. Satisfied? I wasn't. I don't know. It's $3.99 on Kindle if you want to read it. I don't recommend it. I think that the content in it is very rough. If you're not, like, privy on horror, it would be very bad for you. I'm a horror guy. I like horror. I like gory stuff. So I can handle it. What I couldn't handle was the corniness. It was just corny. The writing was just bad. But the story is just so lackluster that it just makes you mad. You're just like, oh, okay. So this happened, and for what? Can't wait to see what else happens. Like, I mean, that's pretty much how it went. I don't know, man. Let me know in the comments if you've read this book and if you think I sound like a sissy. Let me know. I mean, maybe I read the wrong first one of his works. If there's ones that are better written, let me know. I'll read them and do a video on them. I got some horror movie reviews videos up right now. I have a fishing channel, Alan Fishing, where I post fishing content. But I think that's going to be it for today's video. I think my next video, I'm gonna do maybe Blair Witch Project or Saw. If there is any movies that you don't want to watch that you want me to watch and review, let me know. Thanks for sticking around. Don't read this book. If you already have, I'm sorry. But that's gonna be it for today. See ya.